Hello and welcome back to Eastman's Yankee Library. Today we are reading from gathered sketches from the early history of New Hampshire and Vermont, containing vivid and interesting accounts of a great variety of the adventures of our forefathers and of other incidents of olden time, original and selected, edited by Francis Chase, Master of Arts, Claremont, New Hampshire, Tracy Kenny and Company, 1856. Today we are going to be reading Chapter 2, Death of Major Waldron, Dover, New Hampshire, June 27th, 1689. In August 1676, King Philip was slain. Some of his followers took refuge among the Penocooks. Others were the Eastern Indians, the Ossipes, and Pequawkets. Hostilities were renewed through the influence of these refugees, and at length 2 companies of soldiers were sent from Boston to Dover. Here they found a large number of Indians at the house of Major Waldron, whom they regarded as their friend and father. The Boston companies had orders to seize all Indians who had been engaged in King Philip's war, and recognizing such among the number would have fallen upon them at once had they not been dissuaded by Major Waldron, who proposed to have a training and sham fight the next day, in order to take them by stratagem. This having been done, they were all seized and disarmed. A separation was then made. The Penocooks and those who had made peace the autumn before were set at liberty, while the refugees, the strange Indians, as they were called, were retained as prisoners to the number of 200. 7 or 8, who were convicted of having killed Englishmen, were executed. The rest were sold into slavery in foreign parts. 13 years passed since the seizure of the Indians at Dover, but they still remembered it and longed for vengeance. Some of those who had been sold into slavery had returned to excite their brethren, and they soon broke out in hostilities. On the evening of the 27th of June, 1689, 2 squaws applied at each of the garrisoned houses in Dover for lodging. The people, fearing no danger, readily admitted them. Missandowit, one of the chiefs, was entertained at Major Waldron's. "Brother Waldron," said he with his usual familiarity, while they were at supper, "what would you do if the strange Indians should come?" "I can assemble 100 men," was the reply, "by lifting up my finger." With this fatal confidence they retired to rest. When all was quiet, those within opened the gates and gave the signal. The savages rushed in and began their bloody work. Waldron, though 80 years of age, seized his sword and drove the assailants back through 2 doors, but when returning for his other arms was stunned with a hatchet and fell. They then dragged him into his hall, seated him in an elbow chair upon a long table, and insultingly asked, "Who shall judge Indian now?" After feasting upon provisions, which they compelled the rest of the family to procure, each one with a knife cut gashes in Waldron's breast, saying, "I cross out my account." They then cut off his nose and ears and forced them into his mouth. And when, weakened from the loss of blood, he was about to fall from the table, his own sword was held under him, which put an end to his tortures. At other houses, similar acts of cruelty were perpetrated, and in the whole 23 persons were killed, and 29 carried prisoners to Canada, who were shortly sold to the French. Many houses were burned, and much property was plundered, but so expeditious were the Indians that they had fled beyond reach before the neighboring people could be collected. This is Luke David Eastman for Eastman's Yankee Library. Thank you so much for joining us, and see you next time.